The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, there is a lot of hype surrounding this book, and unfortunately, to me at least, it doesn't pay off. The hype is not real, the hype is not warranted. I don't even know where to begin. Okay. There are two things that I love about this book. One, the writing at times is outstanding. The descriptions, the flow, the prose, it's sublime. And number two is, of course, our narrator or protagonist, Richard. He's the only character that I have any feelings towards. Everybody else is, by the end of this book, every other character that has any importance to me at least is irritating. Okay, every other character except Richard, our narrator, is annoying. For the first half of the book, 450 pages or about that, that's how long it takes for the actual plot of this book to happen, for the main thing to happen, which is, of course, Bunny has to die, and he finally dies. And you think, finally, after 450 pages, finally the plot's gonna happen and something crazy is gonna happen. It's not the case, okay? The plot doesn't kick off. Crazy shit doesn't happen. And then for the remaining 400 and plus pages, you're still kind of floating in this narcoleptic haze, right? What I'm trying to say is that the book is extremely slow. It is extremely, and that's not necessarily an issue. The problem is that this book is extremely slow and barely anything happens. That's the problem with this book, okay? And for the record, I had no idea that there is such a genre as dark academia or whatever it's called. I had no idea. Okay, so you learn something every day. When it comes to Bunny, this character, Bunny Corcoran, he's annoying, he's a parasite, he is a what you might call it. Bunny is the sort of person that has this notion that he belongs to a certain class, a certain upper class, but he, through his behavior, completely proves otherwise. He is basically a parasite. And, immediately I was antagonistic against Bunny because I have met people like him. These people who pretend that they're all that, who, let's say, are a bit higher on the hierarchy, right? And yet, through their talk, through their certain mannerisms, whatever, they reveal who they really are, okay? And I have to say this, Donna Tartt does an amazing job with Bunny because he is just this Bunny is this slimy, just annoying person who thinks that he is all that, and he can't stop talking, and he's talking nothing but nonsense. Basically, he's a moron. He's a moron who is lucky because he was born in a prominent, wealthy family. Okay? And I wasn't sad at all that Bunny had to die, and I wasn't sad when he died. I had absolutely no connection to this character, but I also wasn't rooting for his demise in any particular way because, he leaves me cold. And this is the problem with this novel. A lot of these characters leave me cold, leave me indifferent. And when Bunny died, I was like, okay, finally, let's move on. Let's move on, folks. It's over, right? And these characters, these students, the group that Richard joins, Henry, Charles, Camilla, Henry, and Bunny. At the beginning, as you start reading chapter after chapter, these characters are promising. They have a certain something that attracts you, right? It almost seems that they're special, right? They almost seem like they are the outsiders. It almost seems like they are the elite. It almost seems like they are in a world of their own. It almost seems that they have certain qualities, certain skills, and certain knowledge that the other people do not possess. And it makes you want to join them. It makes you want to belong to their group. You want to be one of them because you think that these people are special. You think that they are out of the ordinary, eccentric, and what have you. But as you keep reading on, at least to me, these characters become dull and duller and bland and blander. Okay, they were so promising, so compelling, and with each chapter, especially after Bunny dies, everything is revealed for what it truly is. These characters they were ordinary people who just have the luck to be blessed with fortune. Okay, they have a bit more money than your usual student. That's all it. Okay, and they have this facade of being sophisticated and complex and learned, which they are in part, but this is a facade. It's a camouflage. Okay, it's a disguise. And as you read along, at least this is what happened to me. As I was really reading along, especially after Bunny's death, I was like, bro, I'm done with these characters. Just take them out of here. Let's move along. Okay, I'm tired of these characters. Okay, and this is something that I have to confess. Henry, at the beginning, I really liked Henry. I thought that he was different. Okay, I thought the reason why I loved Henry is because he was this stoic, this withdrawn, unemotional, indifferent, impassive guy, who still had a heart, who still took care of his friends, Bunny was being a parasite to Henry, mooching off of him, leeching off of him, etc., etc. And therefore, I sort of had a spark, a sort of connection bond with Henry. But as you read along, unfortunately, Henry becomes almost as annoying as Bunny himself. Henry becomes, what's the word I'm looking for? Obnoxious. After the disguise, after the veil has been lifted, Henry is just as obnoxious as Bunny. And then you have Charles with his lame-ass alcoholism. He's annoying. And then you have Francis, and he's a piece of work as well. And then you have Camilla, who is the most boring out of all of them. And they're all annoying, and they're all bland. And they're all fidgety, and they're all, giddy and frolicking, and they're all uptight, and they're all chaotic, and they're all everywhere, and they're always tense, and they're always anxious, and they're always, and they're always like sweating and looking everywhere, because of course they killed Bunny, and this is what happens in the second half of the book. They're trying to make alibi after alibi. They're trying to sidestep the authorities. They're trying to avoid capture. They're trying to avoid detection by the authorities. They're being questioned by the police, by the FBI, and I'm just like, bro, can we please move on? Like, this is the main thing with this novel. Something had to happen. There had to be a shift, and it did not happen. Something had to change. This story had to take a 360 in another direction, because by the halfway point, I was just getting a bit exhausted, a bit bored, and after Bunny dies, it does not improve in any way, shape, or form. Or I should say, the only improvement is that finally Bunny is dead, that annoying asshole. But, unfortunately, the rest of our main characters, our crew, they become just as annoying. And that is the problem. Nothing really happens. The only good thing about this novel is Richard, the narrator, and the way he talks, the way he describes things. This this is what Donna Tartt does. The Secret History has a little scent of The Catcher in the Rye. Our protagonist, our narrator, Richard, he has a bit of a Holden Caulfield in him, and I like that. That's good. Melancholy, sadness, depression, all of that. I actually vibe with Richard most of all, because he is sidelined in every regard. His family don't care about him. He doesn't really have any friends. He doesn't really have anybody to rely on. And as we find out, even this group of eccentrics, they're not really his friends as well. And I can relate to Richard in this sense. This notion that you're not like everybody else, that you're on your own. He's different. Okay. In my view, Richard is the special person in this group of characters. He is actually the one that's a bit captivating, a bit compelling, because he has a bit of that Holden Caulfield in him. Okay, and I guess we all can relate to that, right? To that trope of this loner, right, who's always on the sidelines, right? This book unfortunately suffers a lot, because, like I said, there's nothing really going on, especially after Bunny is killed, which I really didn't care for, by the way. It isn't a crazy moment in the book, okay? In the second half, after Bunny's death/murder, something had to change. Because listen, this is what I thought. This is what I thought that would happen. I thought that after Bunny's death, the authorities would come around snooping, investigating, and this group of characters would become paranoid. They would become frantic. They would become feral. They would become rabid, and they would suspect each other of being a snitch. Each character would suspect the other, and they would not trust each other, and they would go crazy. They would try to kill each other. I thought that this would be the path that the story would go on, but it didn't happen, right? I thought that this seemingly group of friends that are, tight with one another, I thought that it would unravel, and they would try to kill each other, and they would try to, plant evidence in Henry's apartment, and Charles would do crazy stuff, and Camilla with Francis and Richard and Julian, right? But nothing happens. These characters are bland, okay? These characters are bland after you remove the facade. It cannot be denied. It's a fact. And listen, the greatest lie of all, it's right here on the back cover of my edition of the book. And it says something like this, I'm paraphrasing. Under the influence of the charismatic professor, a group of youngsters, intelligent, eccentric, the elite, you know, they discover a certain type of way of thinking and living, which is so different from the banal existence. And on and on and on it goes. Right? This is what it says on the back cover. And I thought, because, I always love to imagine things, all right? And I thought, okay, this professor, Julian Morrow, right? I thought that this professor was some sort of cult leader. He was so charismatic. He had that riz. I thought that he would manipulate these kids into doing all sorts of fucked up shit. I genuinely thought that this guy would be a cult leader and he would brainwash and mind control these kids and turn them into killing machines, whatever. Okay? But of course, if you've read the book, you understand that Julian Morrow, the professor, this charismatic, fish out of water, eccentric in his own right, he is not even a character. He is barely there. He is barely one-dimensional. He really has absolutely no influence, to me at least. Listen, you can say what you want about Bunny, but at least he had, this quality of being an annoying asshole. Because he was such an annoying asshole, so irritating, he stood out. Okay? Meanwhile, we have Julian, this charismatic professor, and he's forgettable. He is forgettable. Actually, in the plot, he has absolutely no weight when it comes to the plot, when it comes to our group of students. Okay, so I don't understand why they wrote this on the back cover. Under the influence of this charismatic professor, these youngsters, it isn't so. This charismatic professor, Julian, he is barely there. Barely. Forgettable. Okay. Right? So I thought that this professor is gonna almost sort of brainwash these kids into thinking in a sort of pagan way, and they would do things that are bizarre to civilization. And in a way, this actually happens because, under, I guess, his guidance, or under, under, these students, they study antiquity, the ancient world, ancient civilizations and their way of thinking, their ideologies, etc., especially the ancient Greeks, right? And because of these these subjects which they study, they think that they can live in a superior way and think in a superior way. They think that they can elevate their existence by unleashing, one of these blissful states, these states of ecstasy where your consciousness kind of leaves you. If you know anything about the ancient civilizations, they were all about tripping balls, right? They were all about having these bacchanalias and saturnalias, right? They were basically tripping balls, hallucinating, going crazy. And these kids think that if they do this ritual, if they engage in this, let's call it pagan ritual of just, drinking like crazy, maybe doing drugs, engaging in music, singing, rhythms, they actually succeed, and they kind of lose their shit. And because of this, they, unfortunately, because they are in this state, because they are hazy, because they are, let's call it, they are high in a sense, okay? They are not in control of their senses, they're tripping balls, they are in this elevated state of unconsciousness. They're basically ecstasy, right? So they're not in full control of themselves, and they kind of kill a guy. In this frenzy, they kind of kill a guy on his property. They kill a farmer in the middle of the night on his property. Because of this, it somehow leads to Bunny finding out that his friends killed this farmer because, first of all, he wasn't invited to this ceremony, and he somehow finds out that his friends are the ones that killed this farmer, and he makes all of these allegations, and he makes all of these implications, right? He supposes certain things in public, and our group of students, they're getting impatient with Bunny. They suspect that maybe Bunny will spill the beans to somebody, which will incriminate all of them. So they kind of decide, Bunny needs to go. Bunny needs to go. He has outstayed his welcome, right? And, in the beginning, there's this prologue, and it's also somber, so tragic almost melodramatic. The narrator keeps talking about how Bunny died and what an impact it had and how it changed his life and the life of the other students. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Stop capping. Nobody liked Bunny. Nobody cared for Bunny. Bunny was an annoying prick, a parasite, a moocher, a leech, a vampire, right? With a terrible personality, right? And after he dies and his body is found, like literally everybody, being hypocrites, being these fake, phony dum-dums, everybody acts like everybody knew Bunny, and everybody knew what an amazing person Bunny was, and everybody's going ballistic about Bunny's death, and well, let's remember this guy. He was such a guy. Oh boy, and they have all of this pageantry. It becomes a circus, a carnival, everything in regards to his funeral. At the church, crazy amounts of flowers. Everybody's crying. Everybody's has to make a declaration of what an amazing guy this Bunny Corcoran was. And this is really funny. I actually chuckled because it's so fake. It's so hypocritical, because most of these people who go to his funeral didn't even know who the fuck this guy was, right? And then you meet Bunny's family, the Corcorans, and they're all so hypocritical, and they're all so such actors, and they all pretend like they lost an angel, like they lost Jesus Christ. But if you were paying attention, you knew beforehand that Bunny's parents were pieces of shit. They weren't helping him at all at school. They basically just kicked him out of their house and said, "See you later." Just like it happened to our boy Richard, the narrator, and now the Corcorans are crying, crocodile tears because they lost their boy. They lost their boy, Edmund, Bunny, right? Right, it's so hilarious and absolutely disgusting at the same time. The Corcorans, to me, are a bunch of hyenas, two-faced, two-faced, two-bit, phonies, basically, right? But by the end, the problem is that because there is actually no real story here, a lot of this book is about these characters just drinking heavily, smoking heavily, having the jitters, being paranoid, isolating themselves, suspecting everybody, coming up with alibis, not being able to sleep, just being wackaloons, being Looney Tunes. They're losing their minds, right? Which is emphasized through our narrator Richard. But this is what this book is about. all of these characters are so paranoid, they're so frantic, they can't sleep, they keep on drinking, and oh boy, because Charles keeps on drinking, he might spill the beans that they killed Bunny, and oh boy, and, I'm just like, bro, can we move on, please? I'm tired of these characters, right? I thought that these 5, 6 characters, I thought that these characters were gonna be outstanding, and they're not. On paper, they're dull as fuck. Okay? Alright? And, Francis and Charles, they are whatever. Bunny is whatever. Our boy Richard, he has a little thing for Camilla, and you think, oh boy, maybe something's gonna happen. They're gonna have a relationship, a fling. Nothing really happens, right? This guy later on actually confesses to her. Actually, he kind of confesses to her a couple of times, and then he kisses her, and he basically asks her, "Bro, you want to come to my place? You want to come to my place?" And she's like, "No," But she doesn't flat out reject him, and you think maybe our boy has a chance, but it never happens, right? So what's the point of all this? It's so pathetic, right? Right? And I would say, if you're gonna even imply some sort of romantic feelings, do something with it. Don't just blue ball, okay? Because later on, we find out that Charles, Camilla's twin brother, we find out that not only is he physically abusive, meaning that he kind of punches her around, we find out that our favorite twins, that we find out that sometimes they like to engage in that old Lannister skinship. Okay, so there's incest. It's confirmed by multiple characters that these twins, Camilla and Charles, are doing the naughty. And I'm just like, if it were me in Richard's shoes, if I found out that, I would fuck out of there. But Richard, for some fucking reason, he still thinks that he has a shot, for whatever reason, right? And then we find out that actually Camilla is in a relationship with Henry for some fucking reason that isn't really explained. You can say a lot of things about Henry, that he has a lot of good qualities, but he also has a couple of negative qualities, which I would say, he is standoffish, he is withdrawn, he is not communicative, he is cold, right? 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 Basically, he's not fun. He's not a person to be, she's not a fun person to be around, but for some reason, Camilla finds this attractive, whatever, and they have a relationship, maybe, but by the end, and the way this actually ends, it's kind of silly, because it doesn't make any sense. Charles has had enough, he has lost his shit, and he brings a gun to Henry's apartment, and everybody's there, and he's like, "I'm gonna shoot you, Henry, you son of a bitch," right? And somehow he ends up shooting Richard, our protagonist, the only good person in this goddamn book. And he's the one that gets shot. But because this gun is fired in the hotel, already the personnel are already knocking on the door. And I would suggest that this situation could have been resolved somehow. But because of this, I don't know, Henry decides to take the gun and shoot himself. Right? And that's what he does. And I'm just like, I don't understand what has led Henry to pick this extreme conclusion, this finality. Because this situation, although grave, it would have caught the attention of the authorities. I still believe that it could have been somehow managed. They could have gone free somehow, and this is because, Henry is a calm, calculating machine. Okay, he is not rash. He doesn't jump, you know, he doesn't go overboard, and and even though he is this way, he somehow picks this drastic conclusion of blowing his brains out. Which, I mean, the book had to end somehow. Okay, to me, it's not a good ending because it just simply doesn't make sense. It only makes sense if Henry was just tired of life, because we all know that he had certain illnesses, certain problems regarding his health, and maybe he was tired of all the agitation and commotion. Maybe that's the only way that I can explain why he chose to blow his brains out. It was a bit extreme, a bit overboard, uh, in my view. Okay. Uh, and I still remain firm that by the end, I still like Richard. He is the only good person in this book. He is the only one that stands out. He gets shot. He goes to the hospital, right? He keeps in touch with these so-called friends of his, uh, Francis and Camilla, right? And Charles, they kind of exchange letters, a couple of phone calls, whatever. Uh, but it's not the same. And I would say that Richard is finally free of these people. These people kind of ruined his school life. These people kind of brought a dark cloud to his life, during the college period, right? If he hadn't met these people, maybe his life um, would have taken a turn for the better, right? And this is listen. Even though I have an affinity for Richard as a character, as a person, I vibe with him. Uh, he is still affected by these people, which I regard as bland and boring and dull. He is still under the influence, under the influence of the memories that he shared with these people, right? And I'm just like, I don't understand why, right? Because if it were me, I would just move along. Like I don't like these people to me are annoying. They are not attractive. They are not appealing. After the facade is removed, they are revealed for the charlatans that they are, right? And I don't understand why Richard is so, even after, like, what is it, 10, 15 years later, as an adult, he is still, he is still basically in a prison of these memories. He still thinks about these people as if they had a relationship of some kind, as if they had a friendship, as if they had a bond that tied them together, right? Which it isn't true. It isn't true. To me, Richard seems like he was this satellite that orbited around this group. He was not one of them. And I would say that he is lucky that he wasn't one of them. He was just this satellite that orbited around this group of charlatans. Okay? And there is no reason why he should feel so bad that what happened. And I guess you could say that, because they were all involved with killing Bunny and keeping it a secret, blah 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 blah. You would think that this secret brought them closer, but it isn't so. Actually, the opposite happened, right? And I got the feeling that Richard was never one of them, and they never accepted him as one of them. To me, he always felt like he was kept at a distance. And if you pay attention in the book, it is revealed time and time again that these friends of his, so-called friends, they kept things from him time and time again, and then it came out, Richard found out, and he still followed them around like this little lost puppy. And it's sad, right? They did not treat Richard as an equal. That's what I want to say. He was not on equal footing with these people. He was this lost puppy that followed these people around for whatever fucking reason, right? I guess he was lonely, whatever. Okay. But I guess that's about it. The Secret History has a lot of flaws, a lot of defects. To me, it is extremely weak when it comes to the characters and the plot. This book could have been outstanding if certain changes would have been applied. Okay? And this, when I read a book like this, I always think to myself, what were the editors or editor thinking when they were reading this book and, looking for mistakes in the grammar, whatever. Like, to me, this is what an editor's job really is. The mission of any editor is to make sure that the book doesn't turn out to be bland, and the editor's mission is to tell the writer, listen, you got something here, but you need to do something else with this part, with these characters, bro. If I were the editor of this book, this is what I would have told Donna Tartt. You gotta do something with these characters. The plot has to go somewhere. I can't read 800 plus pages of these characters only drinking and smoking and being frantic and being anxious. Something has to happen. Okay? And the sad thing is, listen, I'm not a fan of prolific writers. But if you know anything about Donna Tartt, she publishes a book once every 10 years or so. And in my view, this book should have been better because of this time span. Okay? There was no deadline, and yet everybody that was involved with this book settled for this plot and settled for these characters. Nobody had anything to critique, right? Nobody had anything bad to say about this book when it was written or passed around for, for advice, whatever. Because if I were involved, I would have had things to say. To me, it's a sad thing that even if it took 10 years to write, this is subpar when it comes to the plot and characters. Okay, and that's just my opinion, okay? A lot of people are die-hard fans of this novel, The Secret History, and that's absolutely fine. This is not my cup of tea, because I, unfortunately, can see all of the flaws. And I also have the insight to see that if tweaked here and there, this book could have been absolutely outstanding, okay? Outstanding. And I've given you some advice, examples. I've given you a few examples. Julian should have been more implicated and involved in this thing, okay? These characters should have been, because of this murder, these characters should have had this electric spark between them. The back and forth should have been, electrifying, electric, but it isn't so. It's dull, bland, boring, subpar, okay? But that's about it. If you enjoyed this content, I've got a few books on Amazon. If you want to support your boy, the link will be down below. Thanks for watching. Keep on reading. See ya.